Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're uncovering what is arguably one of the most expensive misunderstandings in tech right now. We're going to navigate something we call the agent trap. This is all based on some incredibly sharp analysis from futurist and economist Thorsten Mayer, and honestly, we're pulling back the curtain on a massive illusion that has completely taken over the 2026 enterprise AI market. Look, if you're involved in buying, building, or managing software right now, you absolutely need to hear this. 90%. Honestly, that number is just staggering. According to Mayer's analysis, a whopping 90% of the so-called AI agents hitting the market are actually just infrastructure liars. They aren't real autonomous agents at all. They're basically just chat boxes wired into your existing software using basic OAuth logins. That just means they borrow your permissions to click buttons for you. But the catch is, they're being sold to you as foundational infrastructure, complete with these sky-high per-seat price tags.
And this brings us to a pretty harsh reality. Thorsten Mayer puts it perfectly. The vendor monetizes the label. The buyer inherits the dependency. Think about that for a second. Vendors are just slapping the word agent onto a simple chat feature so they can charge massive premium platform prices. As a buyer, you think you're getting an autonomous, transformative system, but in reality, you're just getting locked into a vendor's interface, entirely dependent on them.
All right, so here's our game plan for today. 1, we'll cover the AI agent trap. 2, the 5-point filter. 3, the headless SaaS transition. 4, escape being vendor lock-in. And 5, we'll wrap up with the executive playbook.
Okay, let's jump right into part 1, the AI agent trap and the illusion of the market.
So, remember pre-2024? Back then, a real agent was a continuous background process. It kept its own memory or its state across cycles, and it took independent action. Today, though, today a feature agent is just a glorified chat interface. It literally only works if a human is sitting there to type a prompt. Look, calling a database doesn't magically make a simple app a database, right? Well, in the exact same way, calling a language model doesn't make a chatbox an agent. Let's move on to part 2, the 5-point filter. Think of this as your ultimate procurement decoder ring. Question number 1 to ask yourself: does it actually run when no human is logged in? If the system only operates when a user actively opens a tab and presses a button, you're buying a feature. A real agent runs continuously in the background, what developers often call a daemon. It operates on a schedule or reacts to system triggers entirely on its own. Question 2, can you swap the model without losing all your work? Remember that massive shift back in April 2026? That's when free, open-source AI models finally caught up to the expensive private ones. Because of that major inflection point, being able to swap your AI model is now an absolute survival requirement. If the vendor swaps the model underneath tomorrow and all your custom workflows suddenly break, you are trapped in a feature. Real infrastructure lets you swap the underlying model without losing your runbooks and tools.
Okay, question 3. Where exactly does the state live? A real, bona fide agent saves its memory to a database that you control, using a specific blueprint or schema that you own. A feature agent, on the other hand, just traps your data in the vendor's locked-down chat history. If you can't point directly to the database table where your data lives, you do not own the state. Plain and simple.
Question 4, what does the audit trail look like to your security operations center at your SOC? We all remember that infamous 2026 VeerCell breach, right? It proved once and for all that AI permissions are a massive security risk. Real agents send direct, readable logs to your internal digital alarm system, your SIEM. Feature agents just keep those logs hidden away on the vendor's side, which leaves you totally blind.
And the final question, number 5. What happens to the work when the contract ends? With real agents, your integrations, prompts, and runbooks are exportable artifacts. With feature agents, the lock-in isn't actually the AI model itself. It's the massive amount of manual labor your team sank into clicking around the vendor's UI. When you leave, you take absolutely nothing with you. So here's the rule of thumb. If a vendor fails 3 or more of these 5 questions, you're buying a feature. You need to price it like one.
All right, let's roll into part 3, the headless SaaS transition, and why the browser is the ultimate tell. Get this. Right now, 9% of current layoffs are genuinely AI-driven. These are hitting Tier 1 support and structured data work. This is exactly where headless agents, meaning software directly talking to other software without ever needing a screen or a browser, are just quietly taking over. But then we have this 47.9% figure. That was the massive chunk of layoffs falsely blamed on AI. It was basically AI washing, companies using AI as a convenient excuse to trim corporate bloat.
And what that did was distract everyone from the real shift happening under our noses. Vendors moving from charging you per human login to charging you per machine action. Which brings us to part 4, escaping vendor lock-in. We're talking routers, skills, and true independence.
To really pull this off, you've got to understand the difference between the motherboard and the cabinet. Feature agents are the cabinet. They're just shiny vendor wrappers hiding a commodity AI model inside. You don't control it. Instead, you want to build the motherboard. Think of this as your own central nervous system that intelligently routes tasks to different models. Maybe that's a closed API like OpenAI for complex legal review, or maybe it's self-hosted open weights like Llama 4 for routine daily tasks.
Which naturally leads us into skills. So, what are they? Skills are portable, versioned bundles of instructions that frankly do not care which AI model is running underneath them. This is your intellectual property. If you write 40 skills against your own internal systems, you can literally swap out the AI brain in an afternoon. That, my friends, is real exportable infrastructure.
Finally, part 5, the executive playbook. Here are your actionable items for this quarter. Let's break down your direct actions right now. CIOs, you need to run every single agent line item through that 5-point filter we talked about. CISOs, inventory the hidden permissions granted to these chat boxes. They are completely unmanaged risks. CFOs, demand per action pricing. Proper routing can slash your compute costs by up to 85%. And boards, you've got to add the distinction between infrastructure and feature directly to your risk reviews.
So I want to leave you with one final, incredibly important question to chew on. Are you funding the graveyard or skipping it? By 2028, the vendors out there selling simple features disguised as infrastructure are going to collapse. The buyers, who run the filter right now, they're going to be the only ones left standing with true portable power. Don't fall into the trap. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.